By the year 600, Christianity had spread from Palestine to parts of northern Europe. The zeal for Christ was very much present in the people of the British Isles, despite their distance from the Holy Land. Many holy people dwelled in what is now modern-day England, Wales, Scotland, and Ireland. One such person was St Cuthbert. Cuthbert was born in 634 in the Kingdom of Northumbria, to an anglo-saxon family. He tended sheep in the southern uplands, but also reveled in youthful pranks and games with his fellows. Such games were in play when one day a 3-year-old child foresaw the young Cuthbert's saintly destiny. Upon witnessing the 8-year-old Cuthbert's foolish behavior, the lad proclaimed, "O holy bishop and priest Cuthbert, these unseemly stunts, in order to show off your athletic ability, do not become you or the dignity of your office." Cuthbert did not fully understand the prophetic words, but accepted them and amended his life in earnest, spending more time in prayer and solitude. This and other moments seemed to point the way forward, such as the day Cuthbert, still in his teens, walked along the River Tyne and observed several monks on a raft being dangerously swept out to sea. Cuthbert knelt in prayer until a strong gust of wind pushed the raft safely ashore. The rabble of onlookers wrapped in astonishment. A few years later, Cuthbert kept watch over his flocks at night amid the Lammermuir hills, when suddenly he beheld the vision of a stream of light in the sky, with angels rising to heaven and carrying aloft a globe of fire. No doubt, he thought, the soul of a holy man or bishop is now departing. True, for at that same moment the holy Bishop Aidan of Lindisfarne had fallen asleep in the Lord. This revelation stirred Cuthbert and sealed his decision to become a monk. He visited the monastery of Melrose, which lay on a bend in the River Tweed, and like the monastery at Lindisfarne, was based on the Celtic model. At Melrose, there dwelled 2 who eventually became saints, the abbot Ita and the prior Boisil. Boisil possessed great foresight, and upon seeing Cuthbert for the first time remarked, "Behold, a servant of the Lord." Cuthbert excelled at Melrose, being zealous in learning and prayer, remaining ever vigilant and obedient for 7 years. In 659, Ita, now bishop, asked Cuthbert to assist him in establishing a monastery at Ripon. He appointed Cuthbert as guest master, where it is said that Cuthbert once even entertained in a guest house an angel of the Lord, who was sent to test his devotion. Cuthbert also accompanied Bishop Ita on missionary journeys meant to encourage the faithful and to preach the gospel to those still in darkness. Upon entering a town, they drew many unto the Lord, speaking against the arcane and profane ways of the past, against amulets, incantations, and assorted superstitions, and instead preached faith in Christ. Despite the growth of Celtic monasticism, there were also monks in the kingdom who followed the practices of Rome. One such monk was St. Wilfrid, who arrived at Ripon in 660 and imposed the rule of St. Benedict. Ita, Cuthbert, and several other monks preferred to remain under the Celtic rule, and thus returned to Melrose. Soon after Cuthbert's return to Melrose, Boisil foresaw his own death due to the plague. He asked Cuthbert to spend 7 days with him in the study of the Gospel of John. Here they spoke simply about the Scriptures, even while Boisil revealed to Cuthbert things to come, including Cuthbert's appointment as bishop, which occurred over 20 years later. After Boisil's passing, Cuthbert replaced him as the abbot of Melrose. Now in his 30s, Cuthbert doubled his ascetic efforts, in an effort to draw closer to God. He continued his missionary journeys as well. One such trip saw him travel to the double monastery of Coldingham, upon the request of the abbess. He visited and opened up to them the path of righteousness, as much by his deeds as by his words. In the evening, Cuthbert descended the cliffs and headed toward the ocean, although not alone. A curious monk followed and observed Cuthbert wading into the sea until the waves rose up to his neck. He spent the night in vigil, singing praises to the sound of the waves. At dawn he walked ashore and knelt in prayer, while 2 otters came from the sea and fell prostrate at his feet, warming and drying them before once again slipping into the ocean. When the monk later confessed to Cuthbert what he witnessed, Cuthbert remarked, "I forgive you for watching on the sole condition that you please tell no one what you witnessed until after my death." Cuthbert also displayed remarkable foresight, like the time he journeyed with his attendant who worried aloud that they were without food at such a late hour. "Learn, my dear son," Cuthbert remarked, "always to have faith and trust in the Lord, for he who serves God faithfully never perishes of hunger." He then pointed to an eagle and said that it was even possible for such a bird to refresh them if God wills it. Later, as they walked along the river, they were met by an eagle, who, having caught a large fish from the river, left it at their feet. In 664, the debate over whether the kingdom would follow Celtic or Roman practices was settled at the Synod of Whitby. The bishops decided that the church would calculate the date of Easter and perform monastic tonsure in manner of the Roman practice. Cuthbert, seeking peace and uniformity, encouraged the Celtic monks to accept the decision, and won many through his modesty and patience. Despite Cuthbert's modesty, the people recognized him as a wonder-worker and genuine holy man. St. Bede recorded many of these wonders in his biography of Cuthbert. Yet after such a blameless, active life, Cuthbert yearned for the solitary life of divine contemplation. In 676 he retired to the remote island of Inner Farne, and built a small cell and guest-house. He remained on these stony rocks in near solitude for 9 years, often spending whole nights in prayer. When he did receive visitors, he cured them of their afflictions. His very countenance also excited them to a love of virtue. Yet he always remembered the prophetic words of Boisil, and knew that he couldn't remain in solitude forever. And so it was that in 684 Cuthbert was elected bishop. Letters and messengers were sent to inform him of the synod's decision, but he refused to leave the island. Only after a visit from the king and bishop, begging him in the name of Christ to accept, did he submit to the will of the synod. As bishop, Cuthbert remained humble and avoided any excesses in his office. He devoted himself to his diocese, preaching and working wonders among the people. After 2 years as bishop, Cuthbert sensed the time of his death approaching. He laid aside his archpastoral duties and retired to the solitude of his cell on Inner Farne shortly after Christmas in 686. He prepared his flock for their time without him, encouraging them to welcome visitors and offer hospitality, and warning them to avoid heretics. After passing the evening of March 20th, 687 in prayer, Cuthbert sat up and received Holy Communion for the last time, and then surrendered his soul to God. The monks buried his body at Lindisfarne Monastery. 10 years later, they opened Cuthbert's tomb and discovered his relics to be incorrupt, a sign of his sanctity. Yet while they knew him to be a fervent intercessor in heaven, his earthly remains were yet to find a final place of rest. Viking invaders destroyed the Lindisfarne monastery a century later, save for the tomb of St Cuthbert. The monks moved his body to sites throughout Northumbria over the next 100 years, in order to shield it from invaders, eventually settling in Durham in the late 900s, where it rested with many other saints of his time. The tomb was opened again on August 24th, 1104, and the incorrupt and fragrant relics were placed in a newly completed cathedral. By the 12th and 13th centuries, reports spread about St Cuthbert curing nobles and paupers, lay and religious, from across England and Scotland. A collection of treasures is displayed in the Museum of Durham Cathedral, including his iconic pectoral cross. Cuthbert's image and symbols are displayed in the British Isles even today. Many schools are named after him, and several Orthodox, Catholic, and Protestant churches have taken him as their patron saint. Because of his love for God's creation, there is even a species of duck known as the cuddy duck, named after him. St. Cuthbert is not well known outside of the United Kingdom, but those who have heard his story cannot help but be inspired by his love for and dedication to God. St. Cuthbert provides us the perfect example of a man who took seriously God's calling, and who devoted himself toward the service of God, his flock, and his fellow man.